This is for archival purposes, marketing purposes, and again, we are streaming through Facebook as well, just to make the talk more accessible to everyone. All right, so without further ado, I give you Miss Sylvia Puentes, Access Consciousness Certified Facilitator. Thank you so much, Sylvia, for accepting our invitation.
And I'm delighted to be here. I'm always really excited when people are launching, different programs or radio shows, whatever it is, to actually invite people to something different. I think now more than ever on the planet, we all realize that we require something different, something that actually works. And the gift of actually bringing tonight's topic about access consciousness. I mean, that's the tagline of Access, empowering you to know that you know. Now, there's a lot of places I can go with this topic. And Monica, you've been so great to give me a couple, places where really like, what can I leave you with that gives you a better sense of what access is, what, it's actually contributed to my life. And there's so much. And I guess it's such a depth and body of work that I'm always in the question, what's going to contribute to you the most? What's actually going on in your life that maybe one tool, maybe some information will give you a sense of a possibility that you never thought was actually possible. So when I came to Access Consciousness about 12 years ago, I didn't consider my life to be awful. Like I didn't come to fix a problem, which, people come for all sorts of reasons, all ages, right? I did not consider myself a seeker either. So it was just kind of like, okay. And that's kind of something that I joke around because like, oh, sure, I'll try that. And yet when I started to look at what was underneath my journey up until I discovered Access Consciousness was that I knew there was something greater possible in life. So I'm sharing this story with you, but ask yourself, what have you always known? What have you always known or always desired that got buried under something? So as a kid, when I would see people that were sad, it's like, I wanted to do what I could to get them to that lightness and that joy. Now, what I know now is that not everybody actually desires that, right? But when you're a kid and you see your parents or there's fighting going on, you want to change that. Or then later when I started working, I was an elementary school teacher for, several years. And I knew there was something else available in the educational system. And yet one legislation or whatever it was that came through kept limiting the creativity and the possibilities that I felt were available. So, but this desire, like there's always like knowing there was something greater is actually what's been continuing to, you might say, drive me or invite me to keep choosing something greater. So here comes Access Consciousness. A friend, I was part of a women's group and, we were getting together. She had listened to a podcast and Dr. Dane, part of the package was a book and something about access bars. So, it's kind of this weird thing. And I laugh about it now, but I turned the back of the cover and it was what was it called? The book was on embodiment, but in the back, it's Dr. Dane here. He's the co-creator of Access, very handsome man and with very little clothes, I'm like, oh, I'll go to that class. So I joke, that's what
motivation, why not?
It's like whatever it takes. But I'm also sharing this because it wasn't significant. And yet there's certain things that tug us, like those of you that are listening today that have been following, these different interviews. It's like, what is it that's tugging you? What is it that you actually desire that might be that invitation to listen to one thing, to go one place? And again, you might not be very clear right now, but it's okay. You're following one breadcrumb, maybe the second one, and there'll be more and more space that opens up. So in this women's group, we watched this video about the bars, kind of touched a couple points on the head. It was like, okay, didn't feel anything. I left to the day to go volunteer at my son's school and, talk to the kids, the teachers, some of the parents. We were preparing for an event. And then I sat there and I thought, something is so different. What is going on? And then I caught myself, I was like, oh, I noticed that I wasn't doubting myself. I don't know what it's like for you guys, and please share in the chat if you'd like, but those moments where you get around a lot of people, it's like all of a sudden, should I go over there? No. Oh, I shouldn't have said that. oh, look at how that person's looking at me. Oh no, that, where I didn't know I had that much chatter in my head. And for that moment, as I was sitting there going, wait, something's different. Now, the way I describe it, it's as if someone turned off the wind. There was a level of space and a level of like quietness, calmness that I was like, I had never experienced it. So I wouldn't even say I was looking for it because I didn't even imagine it could exist. And then I'm all, the only thing I did different today was that weird thing on the head. I was like, and so I was like, was it that? So, and that then is one of the first classes in Access Consciousness called the Access Bars. And we actually have a global event that's happening on live and live many places. We're streaming it live from Houston, but that's on Saturday, the 15th for 10 hours. So if you guys want to know more about that, maybe we can share that link so people have it. So you can
Definitely.
receive way more information. You'll actually get to hear it from the founder, Gary Douglas, and then, Dr. Dane here and many other amazing facilitators.
Absolutely. And that's great. I'm sorry, Sylvia.
No,
I
no,
just
please.
to build up upon that point, just to let know people who are with us that we are gonna have a kind of like an extension, or we're just gonna kind of like become part of this celebration here in Tampa and in Orlando. Wood is gonna be with us during that event, but we are gonna be exchanging bars. We're gonna be offering free bar sessions as well. So it's really a great celebration, and it's really really nice when you are able to meet with all these people who actually share this passion for access consciousness. So just for everybody to know that we're gonna actually be meeting in person and sharing bars as well in Tampa and Orlando on Saturday. So that's great.
And that's
Sylvia,
amazing.
mhm,
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Go
was
for
gonna
it.
ask you, because a lot of the people who join us tonight, they are totally new to access consciousness.
Mhm.
How you will define access consciousness?
Well, that's probably one of the things that challenges a lot of new people that come is that access conscious doesn't have a definition. It's actually inviting us to go outside of definition and conclusions by the tools and techniques that it does share. So when you say define access consciousness in a few words, it's like you might say it's a branch of work that is about empowering people to know that they know. How it goes about it, there's courses, there's books, there's facilitators around the world. So, and we can share the website if you want to actually explore it for yourself. And I would say that the biggest thing, I can share my personal impact, but it's like, no one ever told me I knew.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
like if you begin to just kind of reflect on childhood, education, high school, college, and it's like everyone's always telling you what you should choose, what the right thing is, what the wrong thing is, what the good thing is, what the bad thing is. You go from home to school and back. And so I grew up buying the point of view that I needed to be this, that, and the other, but it had nothing to do with what was true for me, what worked for me, what was actually going to create something greater for me. It was all, so there came a point, there's this part about, you know, it's also finally getting to the energetics of what you can actually change, because of a lot of what's blocking us or limiting us from actually opening up the space to change is a lot of the energy that we have blocked with points of views and beliefs. So if like, so many of us, I'm sure, have like read books or done workshops or done things, but it's more for the head than it is to actually energetically change it with unblocking that energy. So one of the things that makes access consciousness so different is what we call the clearing statement. It's the clearing statement, their website. I shared the link with you, Monica. I don't know if we can put it up in here, but there's a
Definitely.
website, www.theclearingstatement.com, where Dr. Dane explains it in much bigger depth. But it's the willingness to start to dismantle the polarity of our thoughts, our feelings, and our emotions. Because that polarity of good and bad So the clearance statement goes like this, and maybe I'll share it and just see what you perceive as we begin to practice and play with unblocking that energy. It really is like if we didn't live in polarity, how many more choices would be available? So, I hope that maybe gives a sense of what it is. But I always joke with people. I go, one of the things that I have to my advantage is that I've never considered myself to be smart. And when, the gift of that is like, okay, just following, like it allowed me to follow the energy a lot more. Um, but when you feel like you got to process it through your head so much, you limit sometimes what the gift can be of what you're aware of energetically. And that's one of the things that the bars, access bars, gives you, is that you begin to unlock all the beliefs, all the thoughts, the feelings, and the emotions of the polarity you've locked into your body and your living. So all of a sudden there's a space of lightness, and you're like, okay, I didn't take any drugs. This sense is like, but I feel like I'm, because there's this lightness that we're not used to. Oftentimes, so many people go, ground yourself. Yes, that can be beautiful when you actually are willing to connect with the earth and receive and gift. But if you're grounding yourself to contract you, that's not allowing you to be the space that you can be, that at the beginning can be so weird. Like it's an interesting space. When you allow yourself to let go of the edges of solidity and be space, it's a little awkward. And so people are like, where is the edge? And we quickly want to go back to the solidity of our thoughts, feelings, and emotions. Well, this is what makes access so different, that it's inviting us outside of that so we have more choice, and that you actually access what you know.
You mentioned two things that are very, very interesting. One, something that I love about Access is that they invite you to choose, which is, something so spectacular, because somehow sometimes we kind of get so contracted and so limited by all these structures, that we forget that we have the power of choice. So that's one thing that I really love about Access Consciousness. And something else that you mentioned is the bars. So most of us, including myself, got to Access Consciousness because I took a bars class that actually Ruth facilitated for me. And it was really funny because I kind of like decided to take the class because I love Ruth and she's such a dear friend of mine. And I'm like, okay, let me just support her. And then I just got intoxicated with Access Consciousness. So it's, it was really funny, but that's the reality. Can you
Can
tell
I
us a
ask you
little
a
bit?
question?
Sure,
Sorry,
sure.
Monica, I'm going to interject because when people hear that, and I see it over and over, like you said, it's that energy, you get intoxicated. But what was it? Because there's a moment that something shows up that you're like, wow. Like, what was it for you you said choice. So was it before you didn't believe there was choice in your life and then there is, or was it something almost not cognitive that opened up?
Thank you for that question. I think that for me was, I believe that I think I had a lot of judgments, especially with myself. I was always very, very hard on myself. And obviously, that created a lot of limitations. In just the fact of here, I don't know, just the fact of knowing that I have that power of choice, that I have the power to change what is not working in my life, what I don't like. And I don't have to wait for anybody else to do that for me. That was just so powerful for me.
Yeah.
So I think that's what really made it for me. And I said,
Yeah.
okay, I really love this.
And what's so awesome is that, you talk about judgment. That is one of the energies that judgment, either for you, someone else, is like, really ask yourself, does that create or destroy? There's one thing in one of the courses, and I read it in the manual. It's like every time you choose judgment, you're actually destroying the possibilities of more consciousness on the planet. And I thought, what? Wait a moment. So why would I choose judgment? If I actually desire a greater planet,
Absolutely.
Why would I choose judgment? So it's like I catch myself. It's like, those mornings you wake up, your pants is a little tight and you're like, it's like, whoa, wait, okay, interesting. There's multiple tools, but you start to catch yourself. It's like, I'm ready to go into like my body and this sucks and this is awful. And it's like, no, I'm not playing that game anymore. It's like, sweet body, thank you. And hey, is there something different I can contribute to you? But not because it's wrong, because my pants are tight. It's like, all right, so maybe we get a new pair and maybe this is the size we'd like. And would you like to change something? But it's you begin to go around the judgment when you're no longer willing to play the game of judgment because it's not creating more. And we do that with business. We do that in our relationships. We do with our body. And like you said, that self-talk that doesn't allow you to shine. But again, no one has taught us or spoken about that. It's always this idea, look at what's wrong with you so you can fix it. Find what the problem is so you can fix it. So we spend all these years trying to figure out what's wrong so we can fix it and to have something greater. Well, I'm going to share two tools and their questions to begin to ask when you catch yourself in judgment. And one of them is, wait, what's right about me I'm not getting?
That's a
And
great question.
the second one is, what's right about this, any situation that I'm not getting? Because what it does is that it flips it. It does a quick flip from you going into judgment where you're actually looking at possibilities. Say you get a flight tire and you're like, oh man, I'm going to be late for work. I knew this was going to happen. What an awful day. Like, just notice the energy, right? There's like, I don't know how to fix a tire. Now, you just keep going to the problem, the impossibility and the frustration of it. Now, what we invite is here, okay, what's right about this I'm not getting? And sometimes it's just an energy. You might not cognitively, you don't answer yourself, but you don't even have to search for what the answer is. It's just like, okay, what's the energy? What's right about this? And who knows? You may never know, but there's something you're inviting to acknowledge. Maybe there's going to be an accident, 2 miles ahead, 5 miles ahead, that you may never know you would have been in if you wouldn't have gotten that flat tire. Who knows? But to begin to trust that the universe has your back and that you can begin to, do workarounds. Now, the other two questions, so this is now 4, that if you like, I know they sound so simple, but yet begin to shift the energy and the perspective, how you're approaching things. The other one is, what else is possible here? What else is possible? And how does it get any better than this? Because again, both these questions open the space for possibility rather than the conclusion of what's wrong and is not working. I know it sounds simple. So access consciousness works a lot with questions. It's not going to give you answers. And really where we look at like answers, we've been given those all our life, but the question will actually empower you to know that you know. It'll empower you to discover and receive way more. And so, if you've met anybody that's ever taken any access, you'll start to hear them. And how does it get any better than that? And what else is possible? Because it's just like, wow. But there's something I discovered, and I'd like to share this with you, especially if you're new, that maybe you can get a head start. Now, what I discovered with many of these tools is that we learn them and then we're like quickly to apply them. And I caught myself maybe 3 or 4 years in, maybe even more, where I was like, oh, how does it get any better than this? And I'm so grateful because Dr. Dane said, he goes, are you really asking? Or are you just saying the words?
Wow. Yes. That's a great point.
So what he invited me to that I share with people too is like, what if you're present to the situation, whatever it is, and maybe you don't even know what it is, but you're starting to feel this funky energy and you're like, am I having a panic attack? Am I, because we are so aware. And whatever it may be, that you actually allow yourself to perceive it, like, wow, there's something intense right now. And I'm not sure what it is, but okay. And it's almost like I catch myself when I give myself that space, I almost take a deep breath, like, oh, like I become a little more present with him from that space that what I'm aware of. Then I ask, what else is possible? Okay. What else is possible? Or, wow, how does it get any better than this? And then I noticed the energy changes, but this is, I mean, I'll let you know, when I first started, I wasn't aware of how aware I am at this point of energy. It was kind of like, oh, I didn't really feel anything. I don't notice anything. It's like, and if that's where you're at, don't judge yourself for it. Keep going. Keep playing with the questions, keep playing with the tools and see what actually opens up for you. Because that's the gift. It's like I had used that tool for at least 4 years with just kind of randomly saying it. There was still change going on, but now there's a lot more present, like you said, like, oh, there is power in us asking a question. It actually creates. When you actually ask, something is already coming. It's like showing up. Excuse me.
I was thinking that something happened to me working with the tools, with access tools, and it's when I start working, I usually, when I get to my little space, I kind of start my day with a number of questions and just kind of like let the energy flow. And for some reason, I feel much more relaxed that day, and I'm much more productive that day. And somehow there's something that happens because everything that I do is just really productive. So, and I love that. I love that about Access as well, because it has changed the way I work, and that's amazing.
And you know, that part, there's actually a study that was done by I forget his title, but the scientist that studies the brain, and Dr. Fanny. I don't know if you have that link, but we could also share that. So there's a short video. There's also a white paper he wrote, but basically he heard about, you know, access consciousness and this thing of access bars. And he was at a conference where Gary Douglas and Dr. Dane were attending. And he's all right, well, let me test it. Like, let's see what happens. So someone he knew within his team knew about the bars. So he did the whole like helmet, whatever, they're testing all the probes. And someone gifted, someone received, and he was reading their brains. Well, you know, he went to sleep and woke up as everything is being sorted on the machine that he was using. And when he looked at it, he couldn't believe the change that occurred in an hour and a half session. And in that brain study, he's all like, wait a moment, this is actually changed to someone who this brain could match someone who's done years and years of meditation. There was a level of peace of, and he called it like a connection to oneness and a creativity available that wasn't available before the bars. So scientifically, even when you look at a brain, for those of you that really enjoy the science and seeing that information, it's available. For the beginning part of 20 something years, it wasn't, because it was working and moving. And now we realize, you know, people like to, you know more in depth of what's actually occurring. So that part of creativity, that part of the energy, you know, I have a level of energy and creativity where I probably do in one day what people do in a month with the amount of calls and things that I do. And it's like, how? I couldn't tell you, but there's something when you begin to clear the energetic blocks that are pretty much kind of like sucking up that creative energy that you have, that then can thrive, can contribute to everything you're asking for. So, you know, I could go on and talk about this, but Monica, you mentioned in your area, you guys are going to have this live event with, you're going to invite people to come and taste it for free. So I would invite you, even if you didn't go to the website or look anything else, if you're one of those people that are like, okay, what do I got to lose? Someone's going to touch my head. Give it a try. What do you notice after? Because it's different for everyone. There's not one particular result you'll have, but what is it for you that shows up? And, you know, for me and what you said, the space of something comes off and I don't know how or what, but I get to have more of me. And that gift, you know, it's now been 12 years and it's like, wow, that gift doesn't have a price. You know, before I came to Access, I have an aunt who's a master EFT practitioner. And she had taught me about EFT. And that was the beginning of me going, oh, I'm aware of energy. Huh, interesting. You know, so it's like, and then she asked me, because when I discovered Access, I stopped with EFT and she was really curious. What had you like, you know, go into Access and leave EFT. And for me, it's like, it's a body of work that I remember my first class, I laughed so much and had a level of change that I didn't knew I desired or cared to have. But I thought, wow, you mean change can come with ease? You know, that without the struggle and the level of fun and laughter. Now, in Access consciousness, it can be very irreverent in what's said, because we're also going to those points of the areas that you've made significant and real and right. Right. And those are buttons that many of us have. You're like, you can't be addressing that like that. You shouldn't be swearing. You should, because those are those edges of where you're stuck in a rightness that isn't giving you freedom to choose. You may not choose that, but the fact that it has that trigger. So Access through questions brings up all the points of views you have. You're like, wow. And then you get to clear what's really not true for you. What you bought was real that maybe isn't.
Sylvia, you have given us a lot of information already about bars, but would you mind to kind of like explain briefly what the Access bars are about in terms of what people could expect from an Access bars class? And we're gonna go right after with questions. So just hold on 1 minute, people.
Well, that's great, because I said it's that weird thing on the head. That didn't explain it. All right.
Close.
Well, it's, Access bars are energetic. It's called bars, because there's an energetic bar from a point to a point. So you're touched 32 points on the head. And when you touch those points, it actually, when you have a hard drive on your computer, or even you move things to trash, like it stays still there. So it's a way to delete everything you've moved to trash. So it's dissipating all that energy that's blocked with what you've made true and real. So, there's electric magnetic components to thoughts, feelings, and emotions. So when you have many of those, it's that heaviness you feel in life. Some of us, like, it's so heavy, we get it in our shoulders, but it's that solidity of what we're carrying around, trying to figure out, we think about it, those emotions, those thoughts, that when you release it, and so every time there's 32 points that have to do with body, sexualness, I can't even think about it, money, control, creativity. I'm going blank now. Well, time and space,
relationships.
there really is all these different points that begin to be in that area where you've locked in so much that if you actually unlock whatever's there, it releases that too. And it's this magical thing. I remember a good friend of mine, after years, she finally thought, all right, Sylvia, I'm willing to try. I'm okay. And she reported back even that afternoon. She goes, Sylvia, it's so amazing. Like, my husband said this and this and this. And in the past, I was so reactive. And this time he said it and I could hear him and I wasn't reactive. And she's like, how did that happen? I don't know if I can tell you how, but when we unlock that space, you have more choice and not reaction. Like, you can take action in a very different way. And that's why, I tell people, so you get touched on the head, light touch. That's all the physical part. When you do a full session, there is one point on the feet and on the hands, because you're beginning to increase the flow of energy in the body to open up to receive the bars. But other than that, that's all it is. And I say that's all it is because you don't have to do anything. You don't have to think about anything. There's nothing you need to repeat. You can fall asleep. You can watch a movie. Someone at 5 years old can gift you the session. It can be potent. It's like, it really is something that it's beyond the structure and the form of what we thought change had to come. So it really, we say oftentimes that it's this weird thing that works, and so you have an opportunity locally, it sounds like, to go and explore that. So.
And like you said, Sylvia, I want to point this out because I know, but for a lot of people, when you go into therapy and they have to talk about things, that could be not necessarily the best way for certain people to kind of heal. And something that I love about bars is you don't have to talk. So you just lay down and relax, and receive, and that's it. So that's good. Sylvia, I'm gonna open the floor for everyone who has questions. So go ahead if you want to ask the question verbally, or if you want to write it down on the chat. This is your time. So if anybody has questions, go ahead, please.
The other thing we say in Access is that there's no such thing as a stupid question. Only stupid people that don't ask a question. So, but
I read that. Yes.
But it's this idea, like, how many of you, there's something there for you, but you go to your head so quickly to try to figure it out and get it right before you say it. So I'm going to use now the clearing statement and see what changes. So everywhere you go to the judgment of you, your question or your idea, that keeps you from asking a question that would empower you to know, be, perceive, and receive way more, will you destroy and uncreate all that. Right, wrong, good and bad, fun and back, all 9 shorts, boys and beyonds. So thank you, Maxine. She says, how long does a bar session last? Well, I mean, when I learned it, I had never been to a class. We just watched a video and it was probably, you know, bing, 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 like 20, 30 minutes, really. Sometimes when I'm in a rush, I just ask a friend to run one point. But a full session can be anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half. But again, you know, once you have them, that's the gifts. Like once you have it run, you'll know. It's like, okay, can you do my money point, please? I got lots of things to clear about my money. Or maybe it's like, you know, body and sexuality. There's even something called aging toaster, because I know none of us have points of views about aging that we could clear and maybe, you know, feel and look a lot younger. It's actually a running joke in Access that people have friends that look younger than, you know, and they're the same age. They're like, what are you doing? You know, so yeah, people tend to, you know, I'm turning 52 this year, and it's amazing. It almost seems like a joke. I'm like, 52, what does that even mean? You know, but I bet you I have more energy than most 30-year-olds. So, or it's like, yeah, like.
Yeah. You look great, by the way, so that's awesome.
Thank you.
I do have a question, Sylvia.
Yes,
yeah,
please.
you definitely look a lot younger than you look beautiful. So just know that you radiate beautiful energy. So I have a question for you about NLP and how in any ways this could relate to that type of technology, neuro-linguistic programming. And it sounds like I've been a little bit familiar with it, never really been to a session, just kind of like read a little bit about it. I've been talked about it a lot, but never got into it. I found it to be a very much of mind work, and it seems like this is more of heart space and connectiveness, and that's the part that I'm interested on. So are they completely different? Is there any?
Well, and anybody that knows about it, please mention in the chat. Like, I'd love to know what you know about it. But I think you already got to a part that you're aware of, where it's so much more in the head. Now, this is where our thoughts, you know, and there's this irreverence that we use in Access. But if you're thinking, you're stinking. You know, is one of the lines that we use, because our thoughts are only going to give us what we've read, we've heard, we've seen, and what we're tapping in is to what you know. And that's the part, and so that's a big difference. And also accessing your consciousness. And consciousness is this, you know, the way it's defined in Access, it's where everything is included and nothing is judged, including you. So your level of receiving is increased tremendously. So it's not about reprogramming you, it's about you kind of unplugging from the matrix, so you can actually be aware of what is it that you know that maybe doesn't make any sense in this reality. This is where you begin to tap into what it is that you know, and what's going to create the change that you're asking for, that you might be aware of.
It's like clearing the noise that is in between your higher self and you. It's not necessarily having to work a lot with the mind, because obviously the mind is an obstacle sometimes. And then that other technology tends to kind of like clear that out a little bit, or like make it more streamlined. But this seems to just completely delete that blockage between the mind and the higher self, and the greatness of knowledge, I guess, or awareness is better the word, because I don't intend to know anything. But yeah, it's like more having a clear of messages of the always knowing. You've always been, you'll always be, and be part of it.
Yes.
Is that what
And
I'm
that's,
hearing?
yes. And that space, I mean, you guys have probably all have one story or two or more
Yeah.
about that moment when, let's say you're driving. Can we mute you, Viana? Just, or there's some just a little feedback, and then you can unmute to follow up. Thank you. But this part about, you've had those moments where you're like driving and all of a sudden it's like, take a left. And it's this pull, like take a left, right? And then you take a left and then, you hear there was an accident up ahead or something. That's your knowing. Those moments, I travel quite a bit and people are like, aren't you afraid? It's like, no, because I actually have a sense of knowing, okay, I'm not going that way, I'm going this way. Why? I have no idea. And yet this knowing that we have has been judged. I remember I'd bought this book. I don't even remember what the book was. And then someone came to visit at the house and my ex-husband made fun of me because I'm like, oh, hey, I think you might like this book. And he goes, how can you give someone a book you haven't read? I'm all, I couldn't explain it, but I just knew that it would contribute to them. So that awareness that isn't logical, that isn't linear, that's the part that many of us have shut off and don't trust. That may be the key to unlock you expanding your business. Who do you hire? What do you look at when you hire people? Is it all linear structure? You got your checkbox, or do you actually know? I mean, I've had the gift of having people hire me. I actually worked for a wine company for some years, and the lady hired me. She goes, Sylvia, what is she goes, what you have, I cannot, no, how did she say it? She goes, what you have, I cannot, what you have, I cannot. Basically, she was telling me what I be. She goes, everything else I can train you in, but what you have is like something so different. I wasn't qualified. I didn't have any other certificates. And I entered a management position within 2 years. So there's an element of who we be that we haven't valued, of what we know, of what we receive, of what we perceive that hasn't been valued, that when you do, there is a level of ease and speed in living and in creating, and a level of joy that shows up it's almost unexplainable. Like you can't make sense of it from this reality. And what I'm seeing more and more in this day, that invitation, and thank you for bringing that up, Bianca, is that it is an invitation to get out of our heads and begin to trust us and be empowered to know that we know. Because once you do, guess what? You're not controllable, and people won't like that because you have a knowing. No matter what science says, no matter what's being said, you're like, no, there's a lie here. There's partly true and a part lie. Okay, let's have it all exposed. What do I know? So not being controlled and having a level of power, because you can choose that power of choice that Monica was talking about. It's like, it can create so much more. And, I have to remember sometimes as I share and get all excited, it's also been 12 years. Not that it has to be 12 years for you. And yet it has been choice after choice after choice that continues to open up a space of where I have a bigger demand and willing to, even coming on to speak here, it's like, oh, what a gift, what a gift. But you would have told me that I was going to be doing what I do now. I actually work with Access Consciousness as their regional event coordinator for the Americas. That recently it's been more global, but I had no experience. And so that invitation by Gary Douglas and Dr. Dane to like, yep, Sylvia. And I was like, to be able to work with a company that's like, hey, what do you know? I was like, me? So, but you imagine having like you relating to kids. Someone asked, would bars target more adults or kids? I say everyone. In the gift of kids. I have a son who's now 23, but when I started, we would exchange bars. And when he would run my bars, he would always end it with this soft little kiss on my forehead. And it was like, oh, I'm actually willing to receive from him and he's contributing. It was this gift that we can gift and receive And kids, especially kids that have been, you know, labeled with so many things at school, it unlocks so much for them. So I think it's the great gift for kids. I ran a program that I created with families and kids, and I would go to parents' homes and do a whole bars class for parents and kids. And the kids had this empowerment of knowing too that they could create and to their parents, contribute to them. So I'd invite all ages. Does it need to be in person? Yes, that is the one thing. And why? It's because our bodies actually require touch. That is one of the things with I've seen with what we're living today that has actually hindered much of what we require. And it is that touch because it increases your receiving. And when you increase your receiving, that increases your awareness, but it also increases your money flows and everything else. So it's not separate. So yes, in person. Any other questions?
Great.
Bianca, Viana, did that answer what you were asking? Okay.
You did. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. Oh my God, it's just with access consciousness, it's just so much
really is.
topics to talk about. And I'm like, oh my goodness. So we are running out of time, but I want to say thank you to everyone who took the time to connect with us today. Thank you, Sylvia. This has been phenomenal. So thank you so much. I'm actually sharing on the chat again all the contact information for Sylvia, for Access Consciousness, for Creative Prana. So please feel free to reach out to any of us. If anybody is interested in joining us for the BARS celebration event on Saturday, please email us at info@creativeprana.com, and we will be more than happy to have you with us. And again, thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, thank you.
And I'll see you out in your area very soon. I'm coming to Florida for some classes.
Yeah.
So yes, like some
Love it.
business done different and some body process classes. So, you know, if you guys are curious and you're interested, you can find them on the Access website under my name, Sylvia Puentes. So look for me and be happy to meet you in person and contribute whatever else I can. So thank you for being curious and keep asking if you would like more information. There's many people all around the world, and I truly desire that every person on the planet knows about these tools, and then they choose to use them or not. But what if we don't have to be at the effect of anyone or anything, and we truly can get the choice and the power that we have when we know that we know? So thank you all. Thank you, Monica.
Thank you, everyone. Blessings. Have a great night. We will be here next week, same time, same channel. So stay connected with Creative Prana, okay? Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Ciao. Ciao, everyone. Thank you.
Ciao, ciao.